Good morning, Maura.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming here and thank you for making the trip so we could do this in person.
Yeah, it's great to be in person.
I was so excited because when you and I talked, I guess it was 3-4 weeks ago, we realized that we were in close geographic proximity to each other and that we could have done this virtually.
Yes.
Or we could have done it in person.
Yes.
So I'm very excited because for Rare Awareness Radio, you are our very first in-person interview.
Oh, how exciting.
Oh, exciting. Yeah. So welcome to
Thank you.
Rare Awareness Radio.
Thank you.
Welcome to Maura McNamara. And we're here to talk a little bit about your experience as a caregiver, specifically with OMAS. You're also an author, which I'm very excited to talk about your book and what you've been doing there. But maybe set the stage a little bit for us, Maura. Maybe tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about your family.
Yes. So my name is Maura McNamara. I have 2 daughters. One is 3 years old. Her name is Bryn. She has crazy curly red hair.
Awesome.
She's a wild child.
So Bryn fits her.
Bryn does, everything about her fits the profile. So, and then my oldest daughter, Ellery, she is 8 years old. She's going to be 9 in March. She is the one that has the rare condition, OMAS, Opsoclonus-Myoclonus-Ataxia Syndrome. I have a husband. His name is Brad. He is also a caregiver as well.
Sure, of course.
And he is, an ever, he's an entrepreneur by heart.
Oh, awesome.
So he's done a lot of he's founded a couple of companies.
Oh, very cool.
So we've been on
in any particular space.
In the food space.
Oh, okay.
So
very cool.
fresh vegetables.
Oh, awesome.
Bringing
Love that.
bringing fresh vegetables and produce to communities that need it.
I love that.
Yeah.
We need more food producers.
Yes, we do.
Absolutely.
Yes. And we live in a suburb south of Boston. Both of us, my husband and I, are both from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Massachusetts natives. I have had I don't want to say long career in healthcare, but I have I've
been working in healthcare.
I've been working in healthcare for about 20 years now.
20 years is pretty long.
I know. But I don't feel that old.
Of course.
So not as a clinician, but more on the administrative side. So, helping people access healthcare. When I was in college, I went to UMass Dartmouth.
Okay. Yeah.
I played soccer and basketball. And in my junior year in college, I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Oh, wow.
So I wear an insulin pump. I wear a continuous glucose monitor. So it's a chronic condition. So I was pretty savvy navigating the healthcare space, and then I kind of
your own condition.
because of my own condition. So I kind of took my career in a path that would kind of help me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've worked in the past at UMass Med School. I've worked at Fallon. I've worked at the Jaws and Diabetes Center as well. Just that. So it's been a wonderful kind of career of like helping people access healthcare, but also for my own benefit.
Sure, those are some great organizations. Especially in the central part of Massachusetts, that are like really important.
Yes, very important.
Yeah, to the whole health infrastructure of the central part of the state. So that's great.
Yeah. And as a family, we love to go on adventures and, just do things to, go to the library and, play outside and, do fun things as a family.
Yeah, well, my wife is a librarian. So she would love to hear that one of your favorite outings
is
the library. Yeah, she was a former children's librarian. So
nice.
Even more so. Yeah, awesome. Good deal. So Ellery is 8 years old now.
She is.
About when did you start to begin what I know for many, many moms and dads is what we call the diagnostic odyssey of trying to understand where it all began, I guess.
Yes. So she was about 2.5 years old. So it's been, it's almost 6 years at this point. And this time of year really brings up a lot of memories because it happened during this time of year. So, she was 2.5 years old, a toddler in every sense of the word. But she was very physically capable.
Okay. Yeah.
She was, hitting all the milestones all throughout her, infancy into toddlerhood, hitting all of her milestones, no issues. when she was born, as a person with diabetes, I had to be very careful about,
Sure.
my health during that time.
Yeah, gestation.
So, the one issue when she was born very large. So she was over 11 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Yes, she was a big baby. She was a big baby. But that can be
That's not like
pretty typical.
Abnormal.
No,
just big.
I mean, just very big. So my husband and I are both pretty tall, pretty big people. And we were both pretty big babies as well. So,
this is
with diabetes, it kind of exasperates that a little bit. But, but other than that, she was a normally developing toddler.
Yeah.
And then I remember getting the phone call she was at a daycare program that we loved. I remember getting the phone call that she had taken a really bad fall on the playground. And this wasn't a real big playground. This is a toddler.
Sure. But even still, your heart's racing.
Yeah, she hits her head. So we go and pick her up, bring her to the doctors because we want to just check to see if she has a concussion. That was the thing. So, there was no signs of concussion. She didn't seem to be phased at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went about our business. Just, basically we were told, just watch her.
Yeah.
Watch for anything out of the ordinary.
So what they always say. Yeah.
Just watch her.
Just watch them. Yeah.
So we did. And for a couple of weeks everything seemed fine. And then I remember going to my in-laws' house, which has a couple of stairs on the first floor.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an unfamiliar territory. So she had been there before, but hadn't been there for a while.
Well, and she's only 2.5.
So she's only 2.5. Exactly. Yeah. So she was trying to navigate their house. And we noticed that when she was going down the stairs, she was having a lot of trouble. And she would go around the corner into another room and she would bump into the wall and just kind of but very, very toddlers are. Yeah, they're rambunctious. We have a 3-year-old now that does all the same things, but it was just
they're still trying to figure out control of their body.
Yes, they don't have that yet.
His baby deer.
Yes, but it was a little bit abnormal. Yeah, so and we were looking for concussion symptoms at the time. Yeah. So we were maybe
with the recent head injury
maybe this is something. Right. But other than that, it was pretty. There was little things that probably we didn't even notice at the time that were happening.
And looking back now, right?
Looking back now, the way that she fed herself, she stopped using utensils and she was using her hands more. And she would stay away from things that were difficult to eat. But again, it's
she's just a finicky toddler. Yeah. Yeah. And look, I can eat a lot faster if I use my hands than if I use a utensil.
Yes, exactly. Right? So,
get back to playing.
Yes, get back to playing. Get back to playing. Yep. And then, after those 2 weeks after we got that call from her daycare provider, things just started to progressively get even worse. It was the bumping into things was basically at all times.
Like a all-time occurrence. Yeah.
At all times. She was also, she really struggled with sleeping. So, we kind of were what? Something is not right. This may be part of this concussion or it may not be. We're not sure. We were told she didn't have a concussion.
Well, and concussions can have these long...
Exactly.
Long tail effects to them.
Yeah. So we were
still not sure.
Yeah, but we were sure
you were sure something's wrong.
We were sure something was wrong, and we were pretty convinced it was because of this fall.
Sure.
So So we go back to the doctor, and my husband had brought her. I was on a business trip at the time. I remember this, and so brought her back to the doctor, and the doctor, took a look at her, had her walk up and down the halls, kind of,
observing her gait.
Observing how she was walking, and then basically said she should go to the hospital. Yeah. Because it's not a concussion at this point. We're not really sure what's going on. Yeah. So we can't tell you what's going on, but you're going to need to get some tests run. So luckily our pediatrician's office is directly across the street from Boston Children's Hospital.
Wow.
And we were so lucky to live in Boston at the time,
sure.
with the care. So,
Yep.
So he brings her over to, well, he calls me and says, this is what's happening. And I say, okay, I need to get on a plane.
Yeah. How far away were you?
I was in upstate New York.
Okay, so
not crazy far.
But not exactly a lot of flights.
Yes, not a lot of like frequent flights.
Yeah.
And so
but you're like, I gotta get home.
Yep. So he had brought her to the hospital. And they were gonna do an MRI, so they have to sedate
a little child because
children they can't
stay still. Yeah.
Even at 8 years old, she still has to be sedated for MRI. So,
sure.
So they sedated her. They did an MRI, and then what I didn't know at the time is they were doing a spinal tap as well.
Oh, okay.
So I think I got off the plane. I called him and said I'm coming to the hospitol, and he was like, okay, these are all the things that are happening.
Right. Well, things had transpired while you were in flight.
Yes, and
you were like out of pocket, literally.
Yes, literally,
Yeah.
and obviously the whole plane ride. I remember I flew with one of my colleagues, and like I just remember that feeling. Like I was like, I'm going back to something.
This dread
that is like going to be life changing. Whatever this is, like this is just.
You had that intuition then.
Yeah. You could tell that something was like really not right. And so I showed up as she was coming out of the anesthesia, which is like an awful setting to see your kid there with the Johnny on and just kind of like,
and then being like all thrashy as she's coming out of anesthesia.
Yes. So and the spinal tap showed a little bit of, some, I forget what the term was, but it showed a little bit, something was off.
Some abnormality.
But nothing out of the ordinary, like it may be some infection or something.
Okay. Yeah, not too alarming.
The MRI didn't show anything.
Really? Huh.
Nothing.
Wow.
So, and in observation, they said, okay, we'll admit you for the weekend because we think that she has this condition called acute cerebellar ataxia. So acute cerebellar ataxia happens to children, and this is I'm not a medical person, but happens to children after they get some sort of illness or virus where there's a little bit of swelling in their brain. They can have some balance issues, but then as the virus goes away, it subsides.
Yep.
So we had a 3-day stay in the hospital.
Wow.
After that. And it's funny, looking back, we were in like the closet of the inpatient unit. That I think that's how like unimportant acute cerebellar ataxia is.
This is just going to go away on its own.
Just gonna
it's a virus. It's going to subside on its own.
You're spending the weekend here. You don't need a window. Like it was the smallest room I think in the hospital, which was fine, but we didn't know.
Well, you just wanted to get out of it anyways.
Yes. So discharge 3 days later. She was seen by PT, OT,
was
neurology.
She improving over that 3-day period?
So there was no improvement, but there wasn't decline.
Okay.
So they said that's pretty typical. Things will resolve. So we're like, well, this is great.
Okay.
So they gave us like, it could be a couple weeks. Could be, a month
like
or
squishy
two.
timeline.
Yeah. So but they said, but you should see improvement within the next 2 weeks. So we're like, this is great.
Good. Yep.
Yeah,
we'll see you.
We'll see you never. That was the plan.
Yep.
And so we got discharged. Our discharge plans were to see neurology, follow up with neurology in 3 months.
Okay.
So this was like December 14th. And
wow, it's like literally this time.
Yes. Yeah. And we got home and she just like deteriorated so quickly.
Wow. Yeah.
So she went from being able to feed herself to not even using her hands because her hands were so shaky that she would bend over.
Oh my God.
And eat
out of
the
bowl.
And like, she was a messy eater anyway, but this was
that's
like,
a whole nother
this was extreme.
Yeah.
And her speech began to get really, really labored. She also started to have what we call in the OMS community rage attacks. So there's toddler tantrums.
Sure.
And those are, the child is set off for some sort of reason,
Right.
whether it be rational or not. And then there's a way to distract toddlers of like 2.5,
bring them out of that,
yeah. Or or they figure it out and they come out of it. So she started to have these rage attacks that were like toddler tantrums times 1,000,000.
Wow.
So it was not, she would not be set off by anything.
It would just happen.
It would just be like in a split second. And then she would, like, you could also see it in her eyes that she was no longer there. Like Ellery that I knew was not there.
She was like
something had taken over.
Yeah.
And these would last, I think the shortest one was about 30 minutes.
Oh my God.
And one of the longer ones was about 3 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
So we had to basically change her bedroom.
Right.
We took everything out of her bedroom except for her mattress.
Yeah.
And like when something like that would happen, the three of us would go. We didn't have my little one at the time.
Sure.
The three of us would go into her room, and my husband and I would have to sit on the floor, and we had to put our hands on our legs, and we could not move.
Right.
And she would like try to bite you, kick you, rip your hair out. But if I moved my hands, it would set her off even more.
Is that something that you learned, or was that something that you were given advice on?
She basically ran the show at that point. So she would put your hands on your legs.
Okay.
And we were like, okay, don't move.
Yeah.
And like my husband and I would just stare at each other, and I would we would both be like,
I know. This is
like,
horrifying.
what is happening?
Yeah.
What is happening?
Yeah.
Like, this is.
So that you're not getting any answers at this point.
No answers.
Yeah.
It's not getting better. She stopped sleeping. The only place she would sleep was on top of me. And that would be for about maybe 4 hours a night, maybe. That would be on a.
So you're not sleeping.
I'm not sleeping. Yeah. My husband's not sleeping. Yeah. It's pretty much chaos. We've descended into chaos at that point.
Yeah.
I had taken some time off from work. But again, my husband was running the startup. He was the CEO of the startup. He could not
So
work.
when he's not working, he's not moving things forward.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it was just we could not leave our apartment.
Right.
We couldn't go into public because of these.
Well, this could happen.
This could happen, and she would hurt herself or hurt other people.
Right. You're a prisoner. Yeah. Yeah.
She couldn't go back to daycare because of the same thing. So yeah, it was just like, what is happening? Yeah. So I called the neurology department, and I said, I think we need to be seen in less than 3 months.
Right.
Like, it has to happen.
Start explaining the situation to them. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had the last appointment with one of the neurologists before Christmas, basically. And I brought Ellery. Brad was working at the time. I brought her, and she presented as acute cerebellar ataxia. Yeah. So all things, the rage included. So it was pretty. Yeah. It was pretty defeating at that point.
Yeah. I mean, here you are once again. I want to know what's going on, but I can't get an answer, or I just keep getting the same answer.
The same answer. Yeah. And I'm like, there's something more. Yeah.
Can I ask you one question too? When they did the original MRI, Maura, what was it of her head?
It was her whole body.
Her entire
body.
Still, that showed no
nothing.
tumors, nothing. Okay.
No.
Gotcha.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So we went to see the doctor, and she said acute cerebellar ataxia. But as we were leaving, she said to me, if you see any eye movements, you need to call right away. And I was like, at the time. Yeah. Tuck that away. I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to absorb
everything that's happening right now. Yeah.
So we left, and I think I remember being in the parking lot with Ellery, and she started to have a rage attack in the office. So that was
before you even got out of the hospital.
Before we even got out of So that was actually noted in the notes of the doctor's the clinic notes that she started to have and was unable to be distracted.
Right.
So I had to physically carry her out of there. and try to get her in the car seat while she was having this rage attack.
Yeah.
She was ripping off her clothes.
Sure.
She was on like it was I would say one of the lowest points of like parenthood.
Yeah.
Of the journey. I remember I finally got her in the car seat. She had no shirt on because she had ripped it
off. Yeah.
She was covered in, she was on the parking garage ground. She's dirty.
Yeah.
I just got her, I was like, I need to get her somewhere safe. So I finally got her strapped in the car. And I just remember the whole way home just crying.
Yeah.
Because she was raging the whole time.
Yeah. And you're trying to drive home from
Trying to drive home. It was just, it was, I was like, this is
the lowest.
This is not sustainable.
Yeah.
This is so, we tried to get through Christmas. It was a horrible Christmas.
Yeah.
She could barely walk at this point.
Sure.
She couldn't walk without assistance, without falling over.
Mm.
So, it's like,
this is more than just.
This is more. There was something more. There was something more.
Yeah.
And it could have been the time of year. I don't know. It was
sure.
But you look back and there's so much clarity that you have now that you didn't have then. And so we go to my family's house for Christmas. She's pretty lethargic. She has a couple of rage attacks, but nothing as extreme as the one at the doctor's office. And didn't care about Christmas presents.
Yeah.
We had
could have cared less.
Could have cared. She basically just wanted to not stand up.
Right.
Not eat.
Right.
So we go home. I'm what is
again, we still don't have answers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So we had gone home from my family's house the day after Christmas, and so we get home. It was about 4:00, and she says she wants to go to bed, which.
Yeah, what toddler wants to go at 4:00 in the afternoon?
So I remember we had taken all of her furniture out of her room, so I laid on her mattress with her.
Yeah.
And she was just talking to me, and you could barely understand her at this point.
Yeah.
So staring at her and rubbing her head, and then I see her eyes flicker.
The dancing eyes.
They dance, so they flicker back and forth, but then they stop. That was weird.
Did I imagine that? Yeah.
Did I imagine that?
Yeah.
And then I turned a light on at the top of her room. I said, Ellery, can you look at that light? And she looked over, and it did it again. So I was like, Brad, you got to come in here.
Yeah.
So I was like, am I just imagining this, or was this
happening?
Is this actually happening?
Yeah.
And so he came in. I was like, and she looked up at him, and both her eyes just moved. So we were like, okay.
Yeah.
So called the neurologist on call. They called me right back. And they said, get a video and send it to me, and I'll take a look at it. So I got a video, which I still have in my phone, which is horrifying to ever go back to.
I can imagine.
But it's there because I'm for
posterity.
For posterity,
Yeah,
you need to. So it could help someone, or
absolutely. Well, that's very big of you to think about having that to help someone else.
Yeah. And then, so I send the video I email the neurologist on call, and they call back right away. And I was like, well, here we go. So she was like, you need to get to the ER right away. She said, I've called, they're waiting for you. Oh God.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, so we're going to pack for a little while.
Yeah. This isn't going to be 3 days. Yeah.
This is not going to be 3 days in a closet, and, and you get discharged. So, and at that point, your mind is racing. You're like, you think is my daughter going to die?
Yeah, you must have the worst.
Yeah.
The worst circumstance comes into play, right?
Because you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
All of these things are her deterioration was so
rapid,
rapid and so extreme.
I was just saying that.
That you're this isn't even my kid anymore.
Right.
This is who is?
But I'm sure you could still see her in there somewhere.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And and all of this, even this December, there was times of levity. So we had, we were able to decorate the tree, but it was a different feeling because there were so many questions.
Right.
And there would be sparkles of her throughout.
Yeah.
But it was she was just
muted or
yes.
something. Yeah.
So, So we knew that we were going into something. So
Right.
we have there was this burger place that's along the way from our house at the time to the hospital that we would go to like on Friday nights or something. So it was like around 4:30 at that point. So my husband and I looked at each other. We're like, we're going to need a good meal.
We're going to need a good meal because this is where the
We're
last one for a while.
We're going to need a good meal. So we called ahead.
Yeah.
We ordered burgers for takeout.
Picked them up. Yeah.
We picked him up a lot. Like he jumped out of the car, got him, and then we went to the hospital. So I was like, this is like the like meal before whatever happens.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It was kind of funny. I mean, looking back, I'm like, that was actually pretty smart of us because we ate hospital food for the next couple of weeks. So we get to the hospital, and at that point, she had all of the OMAS symptoms, looking at all of her blood work, looking at her MRI, looking at the spinal fluid, everything, all of the things.
She was checking all the boxes. Yeah. But finally, you're getting some answers.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We walked into the ER, and I think I said the neurologist called ahead and said, oh, this is Ellery, come on in. Okay. I was like, oh God, this is not good.
This is not good that they know her name and they're waiting for her by name.
Yes, but it was very nice because we were able to get in. We got into, a triage room, and then they had already started the inpatient planning.
Sure.
So we got up to a room right away, and we were able to, it was a long night, certainly. We had our burgers while in triage, waiting to see, the ER doc, the neurologist on call at that point, and then and I'm not sure, I don't know when someone said the words Opsoclonus-Myoclonus-Ataxia Syndrome. Like, I don't know.
I can't imagine you would remember that exact moment.
I actually, as I was thinking about like this conversation, I was like, I don't know when those words came into our life.
Right.
I'm not sure, but at some point between triage and inpatient,
someone said those
words, and someone said, this is what it is. And it was scary to have an answer, but it also felt like, okay, now we can move forward and do something, whatever that thing is.
But now we know what we're dealing with.
Yeah. So that was.
Do you think? And this isn't all that long ago, right? I mean, this is only 6 years ago. No, excuse me. 6 years ago.
6 years ago, yeah.
I was getting confused if she was 6 years old or 8 years old.
Yeah.
She's 8 years old. This was 6 years ago. Do you think there's a clearer path for moms and dads now than the path you had? I mean, 6 years isn't a lot of time, but I'm just curious if you think there is a clearer path now.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because the diagnostic criteria are so that there's no test for it. So there's no way that like she couldn't have been diagnosed before that.
Right.
Before that time that she showed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
She showed the Opsoclonus, the eye movement, the myoclonus, the ataxia.
Yep.
So she had to you have to rule everything out.
Right. No, that makes sense. Yeah. So I'm just curious about some from the advancement of the screening or the diagnostic procedures, but what you say makes a lot of sense in that there's no test for it.
There's no test. Yeah. I think it's more. I think there's more education around.
I guess that's good if you're educating providers to look for certain things, right?
Yeah. And there's more research around treatments. And I do know that there's research around diagnostics too. Because it's the quicker you get diagnosis, the quicker you get treatment, the better your outcomes are. So
now you have a diagnosis, and now you're beginning, hopefully, a journey towards treatment. Right? How quickly did it have to be immediately? Did they immediately start to treatment mode?
I remember we got into the inpatient room probably at 10:30 that night. And they said, you're going to meet with the neurologist who is an OMS specialist. His name is Dr. Gorman. You'll meet with him in the morning, and he will go over the plan of treatment. He'll answer any questions you have. So we're like, okay. So of course, I stay up all night and Google
everything. Of course, you have Google
everything. half of the kids that get diagnosed with OMS have some sort of neuroblastoma.
Right.
So they
tumor.
have some sort of tumor that also needs to be treated. And the other half either had a neuroblastoma and the body took care of it, or this is some sort of like thing that was brought on by an autoimmune reaction. So the thought is, so Ellery did not have any neuroblastoma detected.
You had an MRI.
Yeah, there was nothing
found.
So
you're thinking maybe autoimmune,
or So just so like, but I'm like, does she have neuroblastoma? Is this
hiding somewhere?
And like you hear cancer and you hear you're looking at your kid. Like, there are so many things that are going through your head.
Yeah.
And like the neurological stuff, like I didn't even get how extreme it was. I was focused on like, oh, does she have neuroblastoma? Because I knew what that was.
Because that's something you could hold on to.
Yes. I don't know what OMAS is. Like I don't even know what I couldn't even.
Neuroblastoma, I know what that is.
Yes.
They can do treatment, radiation, chemotherapy, surgery.
Like in my brain that made sense. We even had to write, I remember on the whiteboard in her room, in the hospital room, we had to write Opsoclonus-Myoclonus-Ataxia Syndrome because I was like, I can't
remember this. Yeah.
even remember. Like, so, or like they're like, OMAS. I'm like, I can't even remember that.
Yeah.
We were very fortunate to be in one of the major children's hospitals
with a specialist,
with an OMS specialist. So right away in the morning, we met with Dr. Gorman. He said, "This is the plan. These are the treatments. This is how we're going to do it, and we're starting today."
Wow!
So right away, she started on steroids. So it was liquid steroids that she took as a medication. He started on this IVIG, immunoglobulin therapy, which requires having needles stuck in her.
2-year-olds love needles.
And so a lot of the post-diagnosis rage was around medical treatment. So she was the kid that pulled the IV out at least 10 times. So there was a lot of like we keep saying she has a lot of medical trauma, which she does.
Can imagine,
and a lot of that, it's like they are the top children's hospital in the world, but we kept saying she's going to pull this out, or they had all of these sprays that they could do that would make her calm, and I'm like, she's not going to be calm. Even if you can spray her multiple times, and she's not going to be calm. And she's going,
trust me, I know.
And they have those what they call welcome sleeves. And she would rip that off, and like
she was determined.
She was very determined. She was a fighter. But the rage would come from a lot of that. So like. It's funny, you often hear like, oh, there's a treatment and like, this is so great. But like getting like 20 milliliters of oral liquid steroids into a 2-year-old. I mean, if you've ever smelled liquid steroids, it's disgusting.
Right.
So we mixed it with yogurt, all of these things.
Right.
And this was all like in the hospital, we were learning, and like getting this treatment, there's so much behind it.
Right.
That, it's like, oh, great, she's on a path of treatment. But it was like, there was like
a tough path.
Getting one dose of steroids in her would take 3 hours. And I'm like, you need to do this. You need to have this. You need to have this. And like, even the IVs, like it would take the IV team like a half day
to just get
started. The IV in.
Yeah.
So, it's we were so thankful that there was a treatment, but getting that
logistics of it were not easy.
Of that were not easy.
Right.
And that's a part of the journey that's been really like surprising, because it's like, oh great, she's
treatment, but great,
but great, getting it into a raging 3-year-old at that point is not
so easy.
So we my husband and I were, we were like, there's a plan.
Right.
So let's do this.
Yeah.
We are, Dr. Gorman, whatever you tell us to do, we will do.
You strike me as the kind of person who is really good at executing on a plan.
We'll execute on a plan. Not having planned. For a long time, we were like, we'll take any sort of plan at this point.
Yeah.
So we started treatment right away. we were in the hospital for New Year's Eve. So we celebrated, we rang in 2019 at the hospital.
At Boston Children's.
At Boston Children's.
Yeah.
And throughout our inpatient stay, it's a wonderful teaching hospital. I think for the first week we had probably
Oh gosh. Yeah, I can't imagine
it was an influx.
The parade of people that were coming through there.
Yeah. Which was great that people wanted to learn about it, but at a point we had to kind of shut it down because it was so overwhelming.
For you as a mom and your husband, because we're unbelievably overwhelmed.
Yeah. So and it just kind of like we were there, we were sleep deprived, we knew what was going on, but we didn't know,
You're just kind of sleepwalking.
You're just sleepwalking. You're numb to everything at that point.
Right.
You're like, I've seen my child, in ways that you would never have thought you would see your child.
Right.
So you do get numb to things, and like you forget to eat and you drink too much coffee, so you feel terrible.
So you feel crappy.
I mean, even with me, like managing my diabetes at the time.
Yeah, let's not forget for a moment that you have a chronic condition you need to manage.
Yeah. And it was, it just like that was secondary.
Right.
And it's like, but then I'm like, okay, I have to
then you're not at your best. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, it was just the treatment plan was great. And, I don't know if it was told to us at the time to make us feel a little better, but they're like, this will be like about 2 years. And I was like, okay, I can think about it.
You can think about it and say like if there's a timeline,
yes,
but you could manage to a timeline.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But that felt like
emotionally
2 years was like
20.
Wow.
Yeah.
Might as well have been 20.
Right.
Here I am 6 years later.
Right.
And we're a year out of treatment.
Yeah.
So we did this for 5 plus years.
Yeah. Not 2.
Not 2. And I'm glad they didn't tell us 5. But, the 2 years, like at that point just felt like an eternity.
Yeah.
But I was just happy to have that 2 years because after you've had all of those things, like
you needed something.
You needed a timeline
or a horizon that you could grab onto.
And I also wanted to know, and there was no way to know, that she would be back to herself or whatever version of herself.
The journey back.
Yeah. The journey back. Yeah. She would be like a happy kid that she, I wanted to hold on to something like that too. And so that, that this plan gave that to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at what point in time do you start to conceptualize this idea of a children's book?
So,
I mean, you had a lot of things to worry about.
I did. I did. And I will say it's only been in the last year and a half that I've been able to think about OMAS in a different way.
Yeah.
Different way.
Yeah.
For 5 years, our life revolved around it.
Yeah. Right. And you had another child in that time.
We had another child in that time. So, we, our life was every 4 weeks we go in for treatment. Right. Our life was, okay, we can't think about moving anywhere else because we have to be close enough to
get into
access.
Right. And you have to plan your whole life around those every 4 weeks.
Every 4 weeks. So it doesn't matter when, it needed to happen within 4 weeks. Right. So if it was on a holiday, if it was around a birthday, it didn't matter. Yep. This was happening. Yeah. So that was our life. And so in 2019, she had her treatments. She part of this, and this doesn't happen to a lot of kids with OMS, but she had a lazy eye that came about as part of whatever was happening in her brain.
Sure. Yeah.
So she had the strabismus surgery.
Okay.
She also had another spinal tap we were like, while you're in there.
While you're in there, let's do that.
Yes,
while she's under. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we treated it with patching and eye drops for about a year. And in February of 2020, she finally had the surgery. Okay. Right before the pandemic. So we had.
Hey, let's not forget for a moment.
Yes.
Because it was a pandemic thrown in the middle.
Yes. So 2019, we kind of she was going through treatment. She was immune compromised because of the treatment. We really scaled back on, social interactions.
So you were already good when COVID started.
Exactly. Well, like we had signs like in our house that said like, please use hand sanitizer, please wash your hands. Yeah. You know, way before that was a thing.
Before it was cool.
Yeah, before it was cool. So 2019, we were like kind of shut-ins. We would visit family, but we didn't do much.
I can't imagine.
We didn't do much.
Yeah, with her immunocompromised state and a raging pandemic happening outside your door.
Yeah. So, it just like we just kind of had to meet her where she was at and treat her as So, 2019, she was able to go back to her daycare program.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
They were wonderful to us. They obviously the financial aspect of this, I had to take time off from work. We're going to Boston Children's at least 3 times a week. You have to pay for parking,
everything.
So everything. So, her daycare program allowed us to like hold our spot tuition free, which was, right. And then we kind of like got into the world of like, okay, we have this medical treatment, but she also needs all these other.
She needs physical therapy.
And so, and I'm not sure if this is just in Massachusetts or if this is around the U.S., but early intervention.
Sure. Yeah.
The program early intervention stops at 3 years old. Mm-hmm. So Ellery got evaluated in February of 2019, and she turned 3 in March of 2019. So we had early intervention for a month, but what they did was set us up for an IEP process with the public school system. So it was actually a really beneficial month.
Yeah.
I mean, we had some
services get the IEP kicked off.
To get the IEP kicked off. And then we found a school for her that September. So she technically qualified for what's called like K0 or pre-K.
Okay.
She was 3 at the time.
Yep.
Into a like fully integrated classroom. So they had special ed services, OTPT. Her IEP was heavily with ABA therapy.
Sure.
Because of her behavior. We weren't sure if she was able to be in a classroom safely with other kids. So there was a lot of that. She was like, she would go on the bus.
This is like normal kid stuff. Yeah.
Normal kid stuff.
Yeah.
She had the lazy eye.
Right.
She had the steroid moan face.
Yeah.
She probably looked different to a lot of other people, but we kind of like had been there.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like the change wasn't so shocking. But then when I look back at pictures, I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Like just wow.
Yeah.
Like those are tough to look at.
Sure.
And it just thinking back to like her like starting treatment, and then 6 months later she was able to go into like an integrated
school
classroom. Was
amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing. With a lot of support and a long way for her to go. But, it felt almost like there was like, like I could like take a deep breath a little bit. Yeah.
A little bit for like a second. Yeah.
And then, then her school shuts down. The whole world shuts down. So 2020, she's
back home.
And she's in virtual kindergarten, which is not ideal.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
So, but we continued her treatment.
Sure.
So we were like one of the only ones that they only did essential treatments.
Right.
In hospitals. So we had to go every 4 weeks during the pandemic. So in the early days, that was really scary, but it was like, like once you go there, you're like, there's no one else here.
Right. So it's not so scary.
It's not so scary.
Yeah.
But just a different experience, because part of like going to like you're at an infusion center for 8 to 10 hours.
Right.
With a kid that has an IV in her arm for 8 to 10 hours. And so normally you'd have people come in, you'd have Child Life bring in toys, you'd have nurses coming in.
Now it's like nobody.
And it was nobody.
Right.
And so that was really hard to be there for that long.
Right.
With a kid that's like used to that kind of like, like she like almost would like it at the end.
She's like, why? Yeah. Yeah.
So,
this is bad enough, but the good things aren't here anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but throughout the pandemic, we just had to kind of be like much more, we were much more strict than others. And also, you think about it, like she could have been hospitalized,
Sure.
and then like parents weren't allowed to be in the hospital
with their kids at that time. Yeah, they were like locking you out. Yeah.
Yes.
So thank God that wasn't the case.
Yeah. And like we were very, we were locked down.
Yeah.
We were
Oh, I bet you were.
locked down.
Yeah.
But again, it was like nobody questioned it. 'Cause it's like, we understand why.
Yeah.
We understand why.
Yeah. During all of that, there's obviously there is the OMS Life Foundation and there is an OMAS community. Had you started more to integrate into that community at all at that point, either virtually or how was that started to work for you?
So I would say the first like 2 or 3 years, I only like would interact with the online community to look something up.
Sure.
I wasn't prepared.
You weren't ready to kind of
because I didn't
start bearing.
Yes. Yeah. And it was like we were still trying to figure it out.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But I found a lot of answers through other people's posts and things like that. And
so it was helpful to you.
It was extremely helpful. There's a lot of resources that weren't there prior to the OMS Life Foundation being founded and run. So it was very helpful. And then finally, I think I was like, okay, I feel like I'm like an actual OMAS mom. I've been through it. I've been in the trenches. Like I was so in the trenches that I couldn't even, like, I'm like, I can't even help myself. Never mind help somebody else.
Yeah.
So after a couple of years, I was like, oh, okay. Like someone would pose a question. I'm like,
I feel like I can answer that.
I've been through this.
And I feel like I can answer
and I can answer that.
Yeah.
So
I have the strength and I have the
and I have the headspace to be able to like go back and be like, oh yeah, this is what we did.
I understand.
Yeah. So it took a while to like be like an active member just because I think we were just internally just dealing with
so much to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And through that, is that where the kind of the theory from the book came from?
Yeah. So I mean,
can we hear about the book?
Yeah. Oh yes, please. Please.
Yeah.
So throughout, Ellery's medical journey, we've read so many books about, kids going like Jimmy's infusion day. And like, it would be a book about, someone getting an IV or like, there's a lot of books about kids with autism or other neurodivergence. So we read a lot of books about either medical or different conditions. Even there's books about kids with diabetes. And, part of all of her ABA therapy, there was a lot of like, okay, we want to like read about things in the world so that we know how to deal with them.
Sure. Makes sense.
And so it was about, like I said, like a year and a half ago, we were at this bookstore that had all of these books. So there's these books about,
different conditions,
neurodiversity. And I was like, there's no book that explains OMAS, which is like, of course there's not, because there's a very small market for a book like that. But I was like, maybe I could do something that explains like the journey and the diagnosis and what this is in a kid-friendly way.
Yeah.
So not only for kids, but also adults reading it can kind of get a better sense of what Ellery has gone through, what other kids with OMAS have gone through. And I think it's also good to have an understanding that like people come from all different types of things and you may not know.
Right.
So I started to write the book. And so I wrote it, when Ellery was born. My mom would always joke that she couldn't remember her name, so she remembered celery. She's like, okay, it's celery, so Ellery. And she was like, you told me you weren't going to pick a crazy name.
Moms are so good,
but it was really cute. So,
Ellery the Celery.
Ellery the Celery. Yeah. And like, throughout, I mean, of course we know it rhymes with celery. Right. So we were like, so I had written like 2 different versions. I wrote about the girl Ellery and her journey. And then I was like, well, maybe I could do like a character. And then I was like, well, the celery character makes sense. So then I wrote about the celery character. And I mean, the girl version was like, it was more like, okay, this is Ellery. This is her mom and dad. This is like basically the story I just told you, but like in a kid-friendly version.
Yeah.
And then I kind of like took the celery thing and ran with it.
Yeah,
And I was
I love
like,
it.
oh, she could live in veggie land.
Veggie land, yeah. And have little vegetable
and
friends.
have
Even I just opened to this one page where you say, she would trip and bump into her tomato friends, bruising them.
Yes.
And everything you just told me about her tripping and her
Yes.
bumping. And,
Yes.
absolutely.
So I tried to, make
and
it.
she couldn't sleep no matter how hard she tried.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, she's the celery character that kind of goes through the diagnosis journey. There's a in veggie land, the broccoli are the doctors.
Nice.
So
I can see that.
Yeah, exactly. So the celery and Ellery loves to create art.
Okay.
And so all the celery in veggie land create the art.
Uh-huh.
I think the tomatoes are the architects, or the carrots might be the architects.
Okay.
But the broccoli are the doctors.
Yeah.
And so it goes through kind of that journey.
Sure.
She saw the neurologist, Dr. Broccoli, before the veggie land harvest, so before Christmas.
Yeah.
And then after, her eyes started fluttering, dancing like lettuce leaves blowing in the wind. And then she saw Dr. Green, so Dr. Gorman, the broccoli, where she gets the diagnosis. And there's a great visual on the diagnosis page, and I worked with an amazing illustrator.
Yeah, the illustrations are wonderful.
She basically took everything that I wanted in my brain, and she just nailed it.
Yeah.
And I thought I was being so ridiculous about the celery. I was like, and I showed her a picture of Ellery, and I told her what I want, and then she made
it
this
happen.
character.
Yeah.
And I was like, she's just amazing.
It's outstanding.
So, so she came up with the idea of so there's a flower and it says OMS at the top.
Right.
And then it says, basically what does Opsoclonus-Myoclonus-Ataxia Syndrome mean?
Yeah.
Because it kind of gives a good visual for kids to say this, it's a really long name.
Right.
It's a short.
But we can break it down.
But we can break it down. And this is why.
I love how you say syndrome.
Medical things.
Yeah, I love it.
So that's been, and it's one of those things I did it because it kind of started to be fun.
Sure.
It was a little bit of an outlet.
Yeah, I was going to say, was it cathartic for you?
It was very cathartic.
Yeah.
It was very cathartic. I rarely go back and think about what has happened.
Sure.
I can imagine it's almost you just
moving forward.
And for 5 to 6 years, we just had to kind of plug along, and you didn't have time to really think. But thinking about how to raise awareness, how to talk about what it's really hard to describe.
Yeah.
And so for her, and for me, and and any my husband or anybody that's talking about it, it kind of breaks down.
But it creates this really nice vehicle to do that, right? Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we've sold over 200 copies now.
Love it.
So there's 200 people. A lot of the OMAS community has purchased the book, but there's all these people that didn't even know this about Ellery,
right?
That also bought the book, and
because now they feel closer to her.
And now they feel closer to her, and they understand. And so there's people that have heard of OMAS and what it is, and kind of can understand it and articulate what it might mean.
There's a lot of power in the concept of, can you explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old, right? And that's really what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
And that's what I tried to do. Yeah.
That's outstanding. Yeah.
Yeah. And, there's I did put in the back, the description of what OMS is from
the medical,
the medical side.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that was in there.
Sure. Of course.
Because it's it is a silly thing to a very serious thing, but there's no other, you can't make a kid's book very seriously.
No, it's kind of the whole point,
Kind of the whole
We're talking about celery.
We're talking about celery.
Tomatoes.
Yes, and she goes to Fruitopia, and she meets the king and queen of Fruitopia, who's a banana and a blueberry, and because those are her favorite fruits.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah.
And she had also been involved in the process.
I was going to ask you that.
Yes.
Was she part of the creative process?
Oh, she was very much so part of the creative process. So
awesome.
There's a couple of her original artwork in the book. So there's a celery character at an easel in 2 of the illustrations, and she picked out 2 of her pieces of art
to put on the easel.
To put on the easel.
Outstanding.
And she also she wanted to include her little sister. So she added in a Princess Strawberry character.
Wow.
Because she has the red hair.
Yeah.
And she's a strawberry.
Wow.
So Ellery wanted that.
That's very remarkable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As you so this, when did it get published?
So September of this year.
Okay. So
Yeah.
just
very recently.
So very recently, you've already over 200 copies
Yeah.
sold. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, in just a couple of
Yeah.
months.
And I'm working with the
Fascinating.
OMS Life Foundation to kind of get it out to, as like a newly diagnosed patient packet. They're working on putting together a lot of
that's cool.
research because, there's a lot that's there. It's hard to find, like I was, Googling everything.
Right.
Instead of doing that, here's a packet. So we want to include this in the packet. And then, the foundation has a caregivers conference every 2 years.
Yep.
So everybody's going to get a copy
together
of it.
for that. Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing. That's amazing. When it comes to this OMAS condition, Maura, and you think about the things now
Mhm.
that are the most important things for you,
Mhm.
what are some of those things? Is it awareness? Is it, I'm kind of curious about your foremost concerns now as you are a year out of treatment and, kind of looking forward.
Yeah, my husband and I have talked about this a lot because we're like out of the acute medical phase.
Right.
So now we're in the phase of what impact has this had on her and her future.
Right.
Right. So Ellery, she has significant learning delays.
She missed out on so much.
She missed out on so much.
Yeah.
She has brain damage.
Right.
She has, so like how do we navigate that piece of it, the academic piece of it, and what does it look like for her future? So how do we set her up best for her
success?
Future?
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that we also think about a lot is, and this is just from our perspective, but there's a lot of general things about OMS that I also want to do. But the risk of relapse.
Yeah.
So this can happen again.
Sure.
So if she gets a virus and illness, if she hits puberty and hormones go crazy, her immune system can attack her brain again.
Yeah.
So how do we, not that we can prevent that.
No, but can you anticipate it? What
So,
can you do? Yeah.
So that's also, something that like a lot of people don't see with us now is that everything she does, if she trips on a curb, if she doesn't use her utensils at dinner now, if she, slightly shakes in the morning.
You're like, what's going on? Yeah.
So we have, because it's not like
you're really hyper.
We are the ones that are going to tell her neurologist that
she's
having a relapse.
She's not going to tell them.
She's not going to tell them.
Right.
It's not like there's no like diagnostic criteria for a relapse. It's like or if she like she still has like tantrums, not tantrums, but she gets upset. And we're like, this seems like unreasonable. Like, and this has lasted for a little while. Is there more behind it?
Yeah.
So like, we're never not on edge.
Right.
Because if we don't catch it, then it doesn't get caught until like, so like you want to catch it before before any more brain damage happens. Like that's the most simplistic way to.
Sure.
So those are the two things, like navigating her academic success and the watching of the relapse thing are kind of the two. I think navigating the academic success, I think, is going to be a challenge.
Sure.
And what that looks like in her future.
Sure.
I mean, she's in a third grade classroom. She has an IEP that's about this
thick. I would imagine very thick. Yeah.
Very thick. She reads probably on a kindergarten or below level.
But she can read, which is good. Yeah.
She can read sometimes. Yeah. She also, I mean, socially she's a third grader, which is I think, not that reading's not important in math.
No, but I understand.
But going from her first IEP, which was all ABA therapy, we don't know if you'll be safe in a classroom.
Right.
Like we never thought.
Having friends.
Now having an entire social circle of people and a supportive school.
Yeah.
it's just like
That's pretty amazing. Yeah.
that's the biggest.
How's your relationship with Brit?
Oh, I mean, she's the best big sister. She,
Yeah.
you know, I think I don't know how she would have been had this not happened,
Right.
but like, I think this has brought her more empathy,
Interesting.
more understanding.
Yeah.
You know, she's been exposed to a lot of different types of kids because of this. You
Right.
know, she's in a summer school program where there's all different levels of ability. She's in a neurodiverse separate classroom for a lot of her academics now. Again, a lot of different abilities.
Sure.
I think she has an understanding that a lot of kids don't, that like people are going through things.
Yeah.
And we always would say to
Well,
her,
that speaks to the empathy.
yeah,
Right?
oh my gosh, she's more
The
empathetic.
connection.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. She understands people. And you know, we would always say to her, like everyone has to do hard things. Like, you know, we'd go to the infusions and be like, you know,
This is a hard thing to do
This is
today.
a hard thing
Yeah.
to do today, but you
Yeah.
have to do it.
Yeah.
And we also say to her, everybody is on their own path, you know, like, because she's at the age where she understands that she can't read like her peers.
Right.
She struggles with certain things that her peers do not.
Right.
You know, her peers are reading chapter books and she's on,
Yeah.
you know, pre-K readers. So, you know, I think she understands that there's different paths for people. And, you know, that I think is, you know,
That's pretty intuitive.
It is.
For
It is. It
Yeah.
is. It
Yeah.
is. You know, yeah, she has a sense about her, but yeah, she's happy and bubbly and has friends and loves playing and pretending.
I love
So, yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Well, Maura, I want to thank you so much for coming on here today and telling us Ellery's story, the story of Ellery the Brave Celery, and all the work that you and your family are doing for OMAS and the awareness that you're driving through the book, through the caregiver conferences, and just, I know it took a while to get there and I can
Yes.
understand that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But thank you for doing the work that you're doing now to drive the awareness and just build that community and help others in the community. So thank you for doing that.
And thank you for having me, and thank you for doing the Rare Awareness Radio.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.